This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, and Team Valor. For a time, Metal simply watches the flickies who emerged from Gamma and Beta, finding it to be a bittersweet experience, as while this is what his friend had wanted, the cost of these birds' freedom had been a high one. Then, a third flicky comes into view, the blue one who'd been accompanying Amy Rose, having evidently come to reunite with its friends. With it is Amy herself, and upon seeing Gamma's lifeless body, a look of sadness crosses her face, though in a resolute tone, Metal informs her of the E-Series fate, and how it was entirely his choice, made to serve a good greater than himself. Nodding her appreciation for this news, Amy agrees that Mr. Robot was a true hero. Then, with a soft smile, she squeezes Metal's steely hand. Not sure what to do in such a situation, Metal turns his green eyes back up to the flickies, only to watch as a fist on a tether collides with the blue one, knocking it out of the sky. Following the cable back to the punch's source, Metal finds an unfamiliar model of Eggman robot who is glaring menacingly at Amy Rose. At once, he readies himself for a fight, feeling a compunction to protect the pink hedgehog, which is likely a result of Gamma's integration, though as it turns out, this is unnecessary, as bringing forth her Pico hammer, Amy makes short work of the green machine, smashing it to pieces in 2 swift swings, then rushing in to check on her feathered friend. Thankfully, the bird is for the most part uninjured, returning to the air after a bit of encouragement, with the other flickies soon joining it, as it flies away for good this time. This leaves Metal to wonder what he should do now, as despite having the purpose he sought, he is unsure as to how he should go about enacting it. However, before he can give much time to pondering, something draws his attention, that being the sudden rumbling of the ocean itself beneath them, followed almost immediately by the sound of massive watery bursts in the distance. Zeroing in on the source, Metal sees that Station Square has suddenly been flooded with water coming from all angles, though this is hardly the most pressing issue, as from the deluge has formed a giant beast, who Metal can safely surmise is Chaos, now back and stronger than ever. Frantically, Amy tells Metal that they need to get over there, since she knows Sonic and the others will be trying to fight that thing and need their help. Though Metal has no stake in such a fight, that same compunction from before compels him to acquiesce, with the blue bot scooping the hedgehog up in his arms like he once did to kidnap her, before taking flight towards the flooded city. Touching down a few moments later, Metal sees that Sonic and his friends are here just as Amy Rose had said, with the blue bloke grinning that he was just starting to worry those two were going to miss the party. Smiling as well, Amy replies that he should know by now she'll always be there to back him up, before offering him a Chaos Emerald, stating this should hopefully give him the strength he needs to beat that big brute Chaos. Nodding his thanks, Sonic then adds this emerald to the other 6 he already has on hand, with the effect being almost instantaneous, as his fur glows gold and he transforms into Super Sonic. Now stronger and faster than before, Sonic is able to take flight and charge at Chaos, though to Metal's surprise, he does not appear to be trying to destroy the monster, instead seeming to be playing with it, like he's trying to let it work out its frustration through combat. Only when Sonic believes that Chaos has done so does he strike, decimating the water beast with one blow, so that when he reforms, it is not any of the forms Metal has seen, but instead a humanoid who gives off none of the malice its other states did. Now with its rage quelled, Chaos can at last depart in peace, doing so alongside a female echidna and some small winged creatures, though they are not the only ones, as in the sky, Metal spots Eggman in his Eggmobile skulking away with his tail between his legs after all the misery he caused. Having no desire to let the Doctor get away, Metal looks to Sonic to wordlessly ask if he intends to join him in hunting Eggman down, though to his surprise, he finds the blue hedgehog already gone, having presumably set off in search of his next adventure. Strangely enough, Metal does not blame his rival for this, as he is equally determined to be in the next leg of his own journey, with him quickly making his way over to Tails, as he may be able to help him. Looking up as the android approaches, the twin-tailed fox asks what he can do for Metal, with the blue bot responding that he has a query. Can Tails recreate the code inside himself and Gamma that allowed them to rebel against Eggman? Since reason would dictate that such a profound change in both their personalities would be a result of a variance in their code, which could in turn be transmitted to other Eggman androids, thus freeing them from the Doctor's control. Smiling a little at this new challenge, Tails agrees that such a thing should be feasible, though they'll have to return to his workshop, something Metal does not object to, considering how much time he has already spent there. Wasting no time, the young scientist immediately gets to work, taking a complete copy of Metal's code and scanning it for any duplicate sequences, since thanks to having assimilated Gamma, he should have 2 sets of whatever made him defect. However, try though he might, none of these pieces of code give any indication that they are what granted the 2 rogue Eggman androids free will. Subsequently, Tails begins examining Metal's body, talking as he does, with Metal being reminded of the time spent being repaired after he was forsaken by the Doctor. Though he no longer sees Tails as an enemy, Metal still has no interest in socializing with with the fox, and so for the most part stays silent, letting the boy genius do what he needs to. Unfortunately, this too turns up nothing, with Tails ultimately concluding the reason behind Metal's change of heart is not to do with his code or composition, but instead his experience. In a troubled tone, Metal states that this does not compute, with Tails laughing that's the point. The reason he was able to defy his programming is because he looked at things like an organic would, taking into consideration factors like his feelings, rather than operating on pure machine logic. Though a little affronted at being likened to organics, Metal cannot deny that this has the ring of truth, remembering how the discussion about feelings and motives with Amy Rose was pivotal in Gamma's change, while he was prompted by the hurt he felt at Eggman's betrayal. However, this poses a question then. How is he supposed to save the other Eggman robots? Shrugging slightly at this query, Tails suggests that perhaps Metal could try talking to his fellow automatons, and see if he can get them to really reflect on their lot in life. Now it's no fun being Eggman's slave, they might be able to break free of his control on their own like he did. This prospect does not enthuse Metal, as not only is he hardly the sort to win hearts and minds, being programmed for violence rather than social skills, but he also knows that most badniks are not built with the sentience and higher reasoning abilities needed to have a mind which can be changed. Though, all the same, he agrees to try, as this is the purpose he decided for himself, and so will not abandon it at the first hurdle. With this settled, Metal then turns to leave, though before he does, he gives Tails a long look, one the twin-tailed fox takes to be Metal's attempt at thanking him for his help, and perhaps even apologizing for some of his prior hostility. Then, without a word, the cybernetic speedster is gone, his first destination being the ironically named Final Egg, located not far from here, having learned of it through Gamma's memories. Arriving in the valley, Metal does not have to work very hard to find the hideout, as it is the only steely grey tower in sight, not to mention the base of the spire is lit up an ominous red colour, which stands out even more starkly against the natural greens and browns of the forest. Figuring that going in loud will not induce any of the inhabitants to listen to him, Metal opts for a more stealthy entrance, flying up the side of the base until he finds an air vent he can kick in and slide down. Unfortunately, due to Eggman being the paranoid egomaniac that he is, even the air ducts are crawling with turrets and spikes, though making use of his speed and agility, and on a few occasions his black shield, Metal is able to race down the pipeline, before coming out in a central chamber of the Final Egg. As he had hoped, several badniks are on patrol, though none seem much like conversing when he arrives, having only the animal instinct to attack the intruder, forcing him to save them in a manner more in line with Gamma's definition. Making his way further in, Metal is met with the same issue every time he comes across a group of Eggbots, so that by the time he reaches the very heart of the base, Eggman's private lab, it is with many freed animals, but no new allies. Heading over to Eggman's computer terminal, Metal begins searching for any signs that a higher-end android might be present, though to his dismay, he learns that while one had been in development as part of something called Project Mecha Knuckles, the android listed only as MK01 had been transferred to a different base to await completion when news of Sonic's arrival at the base had reached Eggman. Through this, he also learns the fate that had been intended for him and all his fellow Sonic duplicates. Once they had defeated the original, they were to be decommissioned and disassembled, so they could never threaten Eggman. Scowling at how this is a typical repayment from the Doctor, Metal charges up a ring spark field, allowing yellow electricity to circle all around him. Then with a slight motion, he discharges it, completely frying Eggman's systems, and turning this lab into a ruin. It is a small act of revenge, but it feels good all the same. From here, Metal continues his quest to save his fellow machines, though no matter how many bases he storms and how many badniks he attempts to convince, the result is always the same. Months pass in this manner, with Metal growing steadily more despondent, until one day he finds himself deep inside a hidden badnik factory, buried beneath Neo Green Hill Zone. Having just saved another group of Eggman robots, Metal is now making his way through a hidden passage that his radar says houses a Chaos Emerald, figuring it would be unwise to leave such a thing in the possession of the Doctor. However, before he can make it to the end, he is suddenly assailed from behind, as something round and fast slams into his back. Immediately switching into combat mode, the android does not hesitate to thrust at his arm, while spinning in place, so that he catches the attacker before they can flee and slams them painfully into the wall. Glaring up at his foe with glowing green eyes, Metal is shocked to see that it is none other than Sonic, and from the looks of things, the Hedgehog is equally surprised to see him, gasping Metal's name, before demanding to know what he is doing here. However, the answer to this comes not from Metal, but from Tails, as he hovers into view, joined by Knuckles and Amy Rose. In a warm tone that suggests he is happy to see the blue bot again, Tails explains that Metal must be here to try and save the other robots. Isn't that right? Nodding his assent, Metal then releases Sonic, and as the blue blur slides to the ground, he apologizes for the sneak attack, stating that in the gloom he didn't recognize Metalhead, and thought he was just another bad guy. Eyes still piercing his rival, Metal does not acknowledge this apology, instead chiding Sonic that if that was the case, he should not have held back, since it was far too easy to retaliate and put him in what could have been a fatal position. Letting out a gentle chuckle, Sonic replies that he'll take that under advisement, though for now, he's got other stuff to do, like catch Eggman. This catches Metal off guard, as he had not known the Doctor was here, with Knuckles nodding and stating they're currently chasing after him, since he's up to his old tricks of trying to assemble the Chaos Emeralds and take over the world. Making a grave noise, Metal agrees that would be suboptimal, before stating the emerald located in this base is just up ahead, so it should not be too hard to retrieve. Giving the android a smile, Amy thanks Metal for the tip, though she wishes they knew where the others were, since it seems like they're always playing catch-up with Eggman. Factually, Metal replies that he knows where they all are, revealing his inbuilt Chaos Emerald radar to the heroes, with this putting a smile on Sonic, Amy, and Tails' face as they urge him to tell them where the emeralds are. Turning his attention to the radar for a moment, Metal informs them that not counting the emerald already in their possession, and the one at the end of this corridor, there is one located in Casino Paradise, 2 on Ice Mountain, 1 in Sky Sanctuary, and 1 in the atmosphere, likely inside an orbital Eggman base. Patting his duplicate on the back in appreciation, Sonic tells his team that this means there are 4 spots they need to hit up, and 4 of them, so if they all split off and go after a different emerald, they should be able to collect them all before the Egg Star. However, here Metal corrects Sonic's math, stating that there are 5 of them present, with the blue hedgehog laughing that he didn't want to speak for Metalhead, but if he's offering to help, they aren't going to refuse. Since Eggman not taking over the world aligns with his goals, Metal does not object, simply stating that he will retrieve the Sky Sanctuary Emerald, since as the only one who can reach the place without need of external assistance, it is logical he be the one to do so. While Sonic has no objection to this, Knuckles is a very different matter, refusing to allow this treacherous robot anywhere near the Master Emerald, since for all he knows, this whole redemption has been an act to steal the Emerald for Eggman when their guard is down. At once, Sonic and Tails spring to Metal's defense, vouching for his change of heart, though it is Amy who comes up with the most practical solution, stating that since there are 5 of them and only 4 places they need to go, why doesn't she accompany Metal to make sure he's on his best behavior? While Knuckles would rather be the one to supervise Metal, he trusts Amy and so agrees, though as he prepares to head off for Casino Paradise, he gives the robot a hard look, warning him not to try any funny business while in the sacred shrine. Having no intention of doing anything untoward, Metal is unbothered by this distrust, instead simply lifting Amy into his arms and taking flight back towards the entrance, and then into the sky, his radar guiding him towards Angel Island. As with most things Metal does, this flight is spent in silence, with the android being focused on his objective, and Amy having spent enough time with Sonic to recognize and respect single-mindedness. Finally, the pair pass over the coordinates from Metal's radar, with Amy letting out an exclamation as she points down at something, though, as it turns out, it is not the Chaos Emerald, but instead a scowling echidna who is glaring up at them. Sounding a little annoyed at this lack of faith in her, Amy grumbles that Knuckles really mustn't trust Metal if he snuck up here to spy on them. However, in a grave tone, Metal counters that this is not Knuckles, but instead an Eggman android like himself, likely sent ahead to retrieve the Chaos Emerald for the Doctor. The pair then touch down on the marble platform, and up close Amy sees that Metal is right, as this Knuckles is slightly off colour, having magenta fur rather than crimson, along with yellow gloves which contrast Knuckles' white ones. One thing the fake echidna has in common with the original though is his glare, which is firmly trained on Metal, with it seeming as though he hasn't even seen Amy. Good. He can use that. And so as he places the pink hedgehog on her feet, he instructs her to go get the emerald while he will hold off the other android, earning him a nod before she runs off, proving herself to be no slouch in the speed department. Now that it's just the 2 of them, Metal turns his attention to his foe, asking if he is correct in assuming that he is MK01, or rather, Mecha Knuckles. But in this he receives no response, with the blue bot wondering if this is what it's like facing off against him. Nonetheless, he does not let it faze him, instead continuing that Mecha Knuckles would be wise to abandon whatever mission Eggman gave him, since the only reward he will receive for his devotion is either abandonment or deactivation. Once more the magenta android says nothing, simply glaring harder at what he perceives to be a traitor to the Eggman Empire. Then, when it becomes clear that Metal does not intend to strike first, he does the honors, springing forward and swinging a fist at his foe. However, just because fighting had not been Metal's first plan, does not mean he is unwilling to engage, as with swift and deadly precision, the blue bot dodges the blow and strikes back with a punch to Mecha's mechanical cheek, strong enough to tear away a piece of his faux fur coating, revealing the metal beneath. Anger only growing at this, Mecha Knuckles next tries a spin dash, though this is right up Metal's alley, with the reformed robot clashing with Mecha each time he tries, resulting in them repeatedly slamming into each other, then breaking apart as they race across the Sky Sanctuary platform. Finally, one such collision proves too much for Mecha Knuckles, with him being knocked onto his back, and as Metal returns to a standing position, he plants a foot on his foe's chest and commands him to listen. However, it seems that Mecha Knuckles still has one last trick up his sleeve, opening his mouth wide and launching a missile from it, which Metal is wholly unprepared for, resulting in it detonating right in his face and sending him flying backwards. A moment later, Mecha Knuckles emerges from the plume of black smoke left in the missile's wake, his fur and false lens covers burned away to reveal the true android beneath. Nonetheless, he is just as fearsome, if not more so, as with hate in his now red eyes, he charges at the downed Metal. Scrambling to his feet, the Bluebot is forced to throw a hasty punch to meet Mecha's, with it becoming patently obvious that only now is Knuckles' doppelganger fighting at full strength, as while Metal is faster, Mecha has the upper hand in raw fisticuffs. To this end, Metal attempts to do the logical thing and play to his own strengths, employing hit-and-run tactics and homing attacks to get in and out before Mecha Knuckles can do serious damage to him. However, just like Metal, Mecha is relentless, using his missiles to level the playing field. As for all his skill, range is one area in which the Bluebot is woefully outmatched. Thankfully, Metal is able to make use of his speed here to outsmart the missiles, ducking, weaving, and spinning in ways that cause them to crash into each other or else pillars, thus preventing them from hurting him, though this comes at a cost, as all this concussive and explosive force has caused the floating platform they're standing on to crack and become unstable, with large chunks dropping away into the sea below. Once more, Metal orders Mecha to stop, stating it's illogical to continue this barrage, as it will result in both their deaths. Though hard-headed as the real Knuckles, Mecha refuses, even as the very ground he is standing on begins to give way. Seeing this, Metal immediately changes course, running directly at Mecha, as despite what a massive pain he is proving to be, he is unwilling to let the other high-end android die. His function is to save him, ergo he must. No, he will. Leaping over one last missile, Metal at last reaches Mecha, a hand outstretched towards the Echidnabot, though as it locks around the other's wrist, he sees something sinister in his red compound eyes. Then, before he can react, Mecha Knuckles clamps a gloved hand around Metal's wrist, locking them together, before using his other hand to punch the unstable ground, causing it to shatter, and then both to fall. Desperately, Metal tries to use his jet engine to stay aloft, though with Mecha's added weight, he cannot fight gravity, and so is forced to watch as the water rises up to claim them. For his part, Mecha looks entirely content with this end, happy to have given his life to destroy one of his master's greatest enemies. While as for Metal, he silently laments, not only that now his purpose will go unfulfilled, but that in making him a replica of Sonic, the Doctor gave him the Hedgehog's greatest weakness, that he cannot swim. An unknown amount of time later, Metal awakens on a beach, though it seems he's not alone, as to his left he sees Mecha Knuckles, while above him stand two figures he knows well, Gamma and Mecha Sonic. So, there is an afterlife for machines. That is something Metal had not expected, though as he looks closer, he realizes something is off. Mecha Sonic is not the same as he was when they fought, having several altered parts, while the E-Series is green, when Gamma was red. In a rough voice due to all the water still in his vocal modulator, Metal asks where exactly he is, to which the E-Series kindly replies that he is safe, fear not, since this island is a haven for all the robots Dr. Eggman abandoned. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.